Madam Chief Justice, Your Honors, and may it please the Court. My name is Kelly Kearney, and I, along with my co-counsel Michael Johnson, represent the respondent, Ms. Kimberly Clark. Your Honors, the bedrock principle of the First Amendment is to protect speech. And here, a young girl's speech should not be silenced merely because she may have offended another student. Accordingly, Respondent asks this Court to affirm the decision of the 14th Circuit and find that Ms. Clark's Facebook post was not a true threat for two reasons. First, because her post satisfies the test set out by this Court in Watts v. United States. And second, because Ms. Clark did not possess the requisite intent to intimidate to make her statement a true threat. Turning to my first point, Ms. Clark's Facebook post satisfies the test that this Court already set out in Watts v. United States. That test comprises three factors. One, whether the statement is political. Two, whether it's conditional. And three, whether the context indicates the statement was designed to be a true threat. Looking at that first factor, Ms. Clark's Facebook post, as seen on page 18 of the record, is political. Contrary to what petitioner stated, Ms. Clark's Facebook post was a direct response to Washington County School District's new anti-discrimination policy.
Isn't it true that the actual post was in response to a basketball game dispute?
Your Honor, Ms. Clark wrote the post after she got home from the basketball game dispute. However, the post is in response to the school policy implemented by Pleasantville High School.
Should we consider whether or not she mentions the policy?
Yes, Your Honor, and she does mention the policy. She states that the policy is unfair, that it's immoral, that the policy is against God's law. This makes her Facebook post a political statement, and this makes this Facebook post protected by the First Amendment. Ms. Clark's Facebook post is also conditional. The 11th Circuit held in United States v. Callahan that when requisite details are missing, that statement is likely not a true threat. Those details are looking at whether the time is specified, whether the location is there, and whether the date is there. Here, Ms. Clark's Facebook post, as seen on page 18, does not have that time element. It does not have the exact date. What is only mentioned is the location of the school. And here, because the true threat is such a high standard to overcome, Ms. Clark's Facebook post is not a true threat because it does not possess those requisite conditional elements that this Court has found must be present.
How specific does the time reference need to be under law?
It could be as specific as mentioning the hour and the day, and neither of those elements are present in Ms. Clark's Facebook post. She merely references the school. Other than that, it is absolutely vague as to exactly when this could happen.
You said it could be as specific. Does it have to be as specific? Well, she says that it's at the school. Isn't it easy to pretty much determine that students go to school between certain hours on certain days of the week? Isn't that specific enough?
That would be specific if those details were included in the post.
But she says you better watch out at school. So she's saying a place, and we know a time. It's between 8:30 and 3:30. Isn't that enough?
It's not enough, Your Honor, because while the location is there, the exact time requirements still aren't present. And further, there are
Other cases have found that we don't have to have the time requirement?
in regards to true threat analysis.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, the time requirement has been left out in cases where the true threat is so specific and so absolute that it clearly rises to the level of a true threat. For example, the 8th Circuit found in Doe versus Pulaski County School District that a violent and rude letter describing one student's intentions to rape another student, that is something that rose to the level of a true threat. Here, when we look at Ms. Clark's Facebook post, we don't have those elements here. We don't have those specifics.
Well, I think there's no question that there's violence expressed in this post. Would you agree?
There is violence, yes, Your Honor.
So wouldn't that be enough to constitute a true threat regardless of whether or not a specific time is expressed?
No, Your Honor, and this Court is routinely held, for example, in NAACP versus Clybourne Hardware, that statements may be offensive, they may be embarrassing, and may be violent, but that does not strip them of their First Amendment rights. And that brings me to the third factor of the Watts test, that looking at whether the context indicates the statement was designed to be a true threat. And here, we must look at this through the lens of a 14-year-old girl. She was frustrated, and she went home and she wrote this Facebook post to her private Facebook community. Ms. Anderson was not a member of this Ms. Cardona, another transgender student at Pleasantville High School, was not a member of this community.
But shouldn't we look at it from the recipient's rather than the speaker's point of view?
No, Your Honor, and that actually brings me to my second point, that Ms. Clark did not possess the requisite intent to intimidate to make her statement a true threat. And Respondent argues that this court should adopt the reasonable speaker's point of view. Recently, in 2015, in Alanis versus United States, this court struck down the objective analysis of a true threat and stated that we must look at it from the speaker's point of view, despite the fact that that is the minority circuit in this kind of analysis. This court stated that looking at it from the speaker's point of view allows a greater in-depth analysis into what the speaker intended when the post or the statement was created. And here, if you look at Ms. Clark's affidavit on page 23 of the record, she meant this statement in jest. She did not intend for this to be a serious expression of an intent to commit harm.
Counsel, is that a little bit unreasonable in today's day and age when people are saying things online that kids say things online all the time that maybe they don't mean? But then we have kids who are actually committing suicide based on those statements. So therefore, shouldn't we look at it from the recipient's point of view for a public policy point?
For a public policy point of view, no, Your Honor, because looking at it from the recipient's point of view could provide a chilling effect on First Amendment speech. Here, a speaker may be left to chill his or her own speech due to a recipient's unknown sensitivity.
But again, isn't that a good thing when we have people out there committing suicide over these statements?
In that case, if a true threat was actually made and a suicide was the result of that, yes, Your Honor, that is something to consider.
I think
However,
what my co-justice is getting at, though, is that we're talking about a high school here. We're not talking about adults. It's a different context. So shouldn't a stricter standard be applied when we are discussing high school students or we are discussing a school situation?
yes, Your Honor, and that's what Respondent is contending, that we should adopt a strict standard here, and we should look at it with a full in-depth analysis. And that analysis requires looking into the speaker's point of view when the statement was made. Ms. Clark said her statement was made in jest.
Well,
Further-
she might feel that way, but I think the point is obviously her target of the speech, as well as others in the transgender community, did not take it in jest. And since they are high school students, it seems that it's more important to take into consideration what the recipient is feeling rather than what the speaker might be intending to express.
And if the recipient's point of view is taken into consideration here, we can look at the remaining factors. The Eighth Circuit is a federal circuit that adopted the reasonable recipient point of view. And that circuit developed 3 additional factors to look at whether a statement was a true threat. And that's first, whether the statement was communicated directly to the recipient. Second, whether the speaker has a history of violence. And third, whether that speaker has a history with the recipient of the statement. In this case, Ms. Clark did not communicate it directly to Ms. Anderson. As stated before, she made this post on her private Facebook wall. She was not friends with Ms. Cardona or Ms. Anderson. She was not friends with any other transgender student. And while she does concede in her affidavit on page 23 that she knew this statement could end up in the hands of Ms. Anderson, this is not sufficient to make this statement rise to the level of a true threat, contending that she spoke this directly to Ms. Anderson. And looking at the additional factors, Ms. Clark does also not have a history of violence. As stated in her affidavit, as well as her father's and the principal of Pleasantville High School, Ms. Clark has never been disciplined in an academic setting before. She has no history of violence and no history of any such actions on her record.
When you were just talking about the direct link, have there been cases that have applied that with social media?
Yes, Your Honor, and that's similar to the case in Alanis versus United States that this court heard in 2015, where they actually looked at a Facebook post that was made depicting a violent description of what the speaker intended to do with his ex-wife, a kindergarten class, and his coworkers. And this court looked at that statement and decided that it must be looked at from the speaker's point of view to look at what the speaker meant when the post was actually made. And this court found that looking at those statements, those lyrics in the Facebook post were specific enough to make those statements rise to the level of a true threat, such that the statement was devoid of First Amendment protections. Here, again, we don't have those requisite details. For example, in other cases where a true threat has been found, in Porter versus Ascension School District, in the Fifth Circuit, In that case, a violent drawing of a school under siege was given to school administration. That was analyzed under a true threat standard. And again, in the Fourth Circuit, United States versus Armel, where repeated calls were made to the FBI threatening the FBI secretary. That was an example of a true threat. Repeated instances of this kind of violent, intentional, and knowing act. Here, again, we have one instance of a Facebook post that was made as a vent of frustration. And also, in the Ninth Circuit, in Lavelle versus Poway Unified School District, where a student actually stated to a guidance counselor that if a schedule change wasn't made, she was going to kill the counselor. The Ninth Circuit looked at that statement, analyzed it under the facts of the Eighth Circuit, looking at the propensity for violence, whether it was communicated directly to the recipient, and decided that that statement was not a true threat given the rest of the context there.
Because these seem to be such fact-intensive inquiries, shouldn't this go back to the trial level for a trial?
If this is remanded back to the trial level, no reasonable jury is going to find in favor of the petitioner. There are sufficient facts to find in favor of the respondent. And further, Your Honor, although the circuits are split on whether to look at this situation from the speaker's point of view or from the recipient's, every single circuit has analyzed the situation using contextual clues. And here, we must also analyze the context. Again, this was a 14-year-old girl who vented her frustrations online. There had been a purely verbal altercation that occurred on the basketball court that same day that involved both students. This wasn't just a targeted attack from Ms. Anderson. The verbal altercation included a conversation between Ms. Anderson and Ms. Clark. Further, Ms. Clark went home that night and wrote this on her private computer in her private bedroom away from the school. She wrote this to a private community of which Ms. Anderson and Ms. Cardona and no other transgender student was a part of.
But you have to realize that this is different than her writing it in a private journal that stays in her private room. This is on Facebook. When you said that there was her private community, that's a community of members. So that would be her saying it equivalent to a private group of people in a group that is likely in a high school to get out. So in the realm of high school, it would be the equivalent to her giving a threat and it making its way, like rumors do, to another student. So how is that not a threat?
Your Honor, in this case, respondent is not contending that a piece of gossip statement is a true threat. Here, respondent is contending that Ms. Clark did not communicate this directly to Ms. Anderson, and that is highly relevant to our analysis here. She did not speak it to Ms. Anderson nor other transgender student. She does not have a history of violence, and Ms. Clark was
So is it your position today that in order for it to be directly communicated on social media, it has to be like directly sent to them? What do we do with these cases where they post it on a Facebook wall that's public?
Your Honors, we would refer back to the test that this court already developed in Watts versus United States and the Eighth Circuit test here. So while it is highly relevant whether a statement was communicated directly to the recipient, there are other factors to look at. For example, in a Facebook setting, whether the targeted student was tagged in the post, or whether the targeted student was a member of the Facebook community.
If Ms. Anderson had been a friend of Ms. Clark's, would you acknowledge that a true threat existed here?
Respondent would acknowledge that Ms. Clark communicated that statement directly to Ms. Anderson.
And that it constituted a true threat then by that communication?
No, Your Honor, because here we would still have to look at the remaining factors. And that would bring you back to the Watts test, that the statement is still inherently political, that the statement is conditional, and that the context indicates that Ms. Clark did not intend for this to be a true threat. Your Honors, figures of speech are not a true threat in this kind of context. And here, Ms. Clark was merely venting her frustrations that the school policy allowed for a biologically born male to play on her girls' basketball team. Accordingly, respondent asks this court to then affirm the decision of the 14th Circuit and find that Ms. Clark's Facebook post was not a